Welcome to the RetailWire podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another great, exciting episode here on the RetailWire podcast. We are cranking these things out, and I am super excited for the guests that I have in the studio with me today. We're doing another episode of our Meet the BrainTrust series, and so you're going to get to meet one of our BrainTrust members. He's been here for well over a decade, and just really excited to have him on. We've been chatting a little bit before jumping into the studio here, and I'll tell you what, I think you're really going to like what he has to say. So, without further ado, we've got this person has been the director of marketing for Applied Computer Research. He eventually went on and launched his own company. I won't say his name yet because it's in the name of the company. But he did that for about 4 years before eventually joining HRG, or the Homiker Resource Group. And he's been with them since around the early 1992. So he's been with them a long time, and he's seen a lot of different things, and now has ended up in the position of VP of Strategic Relations for the HRG Group. So now we also, like I said, he's been a member of our BrainTrust for over a decade, probably 12, I think he said maybe 13 years. So welcome to the show, Mr. Dave Wendland. How are you, sir?
Hey, Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's you've paved quite a path here with your previous interviews and the podcast episodes as you put out already. I'm delighted to share a couple things about my view of retail, but more importantly, my passion for RetailWire and for this BrainTrust that you've put together of great colleagues.
Man, thank you so much. Yeah, no, we're glad to have you here because, this is your show. This is the fun part, is that I get to put it together. But truly, man, it's your show. So you get to be the star here. This is your time to shine. If you've watched any of the other episodes, or if anybody's listened to the other episodes, this is where you get to meet our BrainTrust. You get to know more about Dave himself, not only as a professional, but as a person. What makes him tick, what makes him excited. And so I'm really excited to dive in here because, like I said, we've talked a little bit off camera before jumping in here. And, it's just been really cool to see kind of your insights. And we talk about history of technology and stuff, the way the world has changed. But let's jump in before we get too far into conversation about tech and everything. Tell the folks listening, just who is Dave Wendland? Tell us about yourself. Do you have, where do you live? Where are you from? And, tell us about your family or any hobbies you got, man.
Well, that's an open-ended question. We could take all day talking about my past here, but I'll kind of condense it into a couple things. Where is my demography been for the last few years? Where am I today? I want to describe a little bit about my hobbies because I think that is interesting, and it's, as I've listened to some of your other guests, I've put myself in their shoes and said, wow, it's like they're me, because I think a lot of us share common things in life. But going back, I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So it was born and raised green and gold, Green Bay Packer fan. Yeah. I joke with people today, my parents, my late parents, used to play bridge with Bart Starr, Doug Hart, Jerry Kramer. They'd all come over to the house and sit around and play cards with my parents. So I had a view of the sports world without even really realizing at age 5 or 6 that these were important people that would become part of my history. My father was transferred to the Milwaukee area where I went to high school, Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, just outside. And it was really through my father's eyes that I started to get an appreciation for what business was like, or more appropriately, maybe what distribution and retail was like. He was the president of a drug wholesale company distributing to independent pharmacy and small chain pharmacy. He also had some ties with Walgreens at the time. And he'd sit around the kitchen table, Brian, and talk about these incredible people that he met. And they were entrepreneur retail owners. And I said, Dad, that sounds really interesting, but I want to get into technology. That's the future. Retail. Not for me.
Yeah.
And so I graduated college and went on to work for technology companies for about 8 years combined, and had in the back of my craw that maybe there was something to this retail But I was still bent on technology. So I had relocated to Phoenix, lived there for a while, soaked up the desert sun, decided to move to San Diego and hang my own shingle on a marketing agency. And my plan was to work with technology companies.
Okay.
And my first two clients in the technology vein was a store chain of 6 retail outlets selling computer software and hardware. So it was technology with retail.
Exactly.
I thought, this is interesting. And the second client I had was somebody coming to market with a software package that wanted my little agency to help them with design of package, shelf placement, and strategy.
Okay.
And I said, oh my goodness, I'm in retail. And I never thought I would be. Long story short, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's funny how those worlds bleed together, right?
Well, and anymore, you can't separate technology from any industry. Yeah. And certainly retail, as a lifelong learner and a shopper and somebody very passionate about it through my training, when I found the opportunity to move back to Wisconsin and join Hamacher Resource Group, at that time it was called DP Hamacher and Associates. The founder of that company was focused on small independent retail operations, and he wanted to grow his business. And so our worlds collided, and I joined in 1992, as you said.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I now live in just outside Knoxville. I relocated to Tennessee earlier this spring and setting a course toward, I'll call it pre-retirement. But basically, we can work from anywhere. So having the opportunity to look outside and see the Smoky Mountains out one window and see maybe a herd of deer out my back window has become pretty appealing to me. And my wife and I enjoy our Tennessee roots now.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So you're kind of living your best life right now. Is that kind of where you're at?
I am desperately trying, Brian, to enjoy two sides of a coin. One is I love keeping my feet in this business, and I'm part owner of the company. We have eaten, slept, and breathed this company for my full 32 years with it.
Yeah.
But we've owned it for just over 21 years, and it's been a heck of a ride. Because every day there's a new adventure, there's new technology, there's new retail, there's new formats, there's new consumer behavior, there's pandemic that changes everything. While at the same time, I have some opportunity now. I can go and swing a golf club and take a walk outside without the extremes of a Wisconsin winter or a Wisconsin summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said 32 years, right, with them?
It's coming up on 32, yes, sir.
Yeah. That's incredible. So what made you, or what kind of led to, you mentioned becoming part owner in this. What led to that? How did you say, were you approached, or did you approach them, or kind of was a combination of being in the right place and putting in the right legwork?
Yeah, sometimes it's through adversity that you find that there's a new opportunity that's emerging. So Dave Hamacher, the founder of our original company, was retiring. Okay. And sold the company to a supply chain technology company out in San Francisco, very heavily VC funded company. And it was during the time of the .com, .bomb age. And so they had oodles of money, but not a lot of client care and kit gloves that we wanted to continue for our company. Yeah. So a group of us approached this technology company and actually reacquired it back from them. So we were owned by this company for about a year before a group of 6 of us initially bought the company. We're now at 5 owners, and we're all working managers in the company. It's been interesting because people say to me, or often ask me, Brian, how can you be with a company for 30 years?
Yeah.
That must be boring. That must be, you're obviously just, gliding now. The reality is I've probably reinvented myself at least 6 times in 30 years. And I would venture to say the retail supply chain, the retail industry has reinvented itself a minimum of 10 times in
Yeah.
that 3 decades.
Absolutely.
Whether it's through consolidation, whether it's through shopper behavior, as I talked about a moment ago, or whether it's just globalization of market, and you can go online and find anything you need. And I'm still passionate about brick and mortar and the combination of what I like to call, beyond omnichannel, it's omnipresent retail.
Absolutely.
Anywhere, anytime, anyplace.
It's amazing because, we were chatting just a little bit before jumping on here. And one of the things I know that you perfectly summed it up there, of how we've gone, if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see what I'm saying, but we've gone from a little cell phone like this. I've got a Sprint, was it the TP2100 Dual here? So I've got this little guy, found this in a box the other day. And we've gone from that maybe you can make some calls and a couple text messages with the, having to press the button multiple times to get to the right letter, to now having a computer completely at your fingertips, 24/7, 365, and we've got companies like T-Mobile linking up with Starlink to be able to offer global sat to cell service and everything. So like you're saying, it truly is omnipresent opportunities to connect with your customers, for customers to connect with brands. I cannot imagine, that you saying reinventing themselves at least 10 times in the retail industry as a whole. Yeah, it's absolutely been that. I mean, even just since the 80s, it has been such a drastic change. So,
And it's interesting, Brian. It's not just retail, like you said. It's every aspect of life. And my favorite quote is from Oliver Wendell Holmes, when he said, "A mind stretched to a new experience never returns to its original dimension." And I think about my late mother when she was early 80s, stricken with arthritis. And we were sitting one day, and her hand was specifically challenged that day. And she was upset because she wasn't going to be able to play golf that day. And she said, "Dave, there has to be some exercise that gives me mobility so I can go out and swing a golf club today."
yeah.
And I said, "Mom, you've been to every doctor." And she goes, "I don't want to go to a doctor. There must be an app for that."
Oh,
Well, this was 10 years ago. And my mother, who had just graduated from a flip phone to a smartphone,
yeah.
already realized that consumers were driving her experience, and her mind was stretched to a new experience, and she just expected it.
Yeah.
Never to return to that old dimension. So I think, we talk about technology, we talk about the application of where retail is headed, and they are on a collision course. There's intersections in every part of our lives.
Yeah.
But every experience we have will add to what I like to call the tapestry of our lives. So we're building it and we're forming it together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to don't say just because something hasn't been done before, don't say it can't be done. It just hasn't been done before. That's it.
Well, that reminds me of my time doing improv comedy. I was part of a troupe in Milwaukee.
Wait, hang on. You did improv comedy. Okay.
I
jump
did.
into this.
Sorry, Brian. I did a little bit in Milwaukee.
Fantastic.
When I went out to San Diego, I realized I really missed the Whose Line Is It Anyway? Actually, I was part of a group called Comedy Sports in Milwaukee, which is now national. It was started in Milwaukee. But I was in San Diego, and I wanted to have a small troupe. So I started a group, ragtag team of performers, called ourselves Just Kiddin'. And there were about 8 of us. And we actually had our own venue, and we did comedy based on audience suggestions. So when you talk about, you never say no to an idea, you never say no to a new experience.
Yeah.
That's what we're taught in improv.
Okay.
And, one of the questions that I often get asked is, what skills should retailers have? What skills should leaders have?
Yeah.
And the answer is always, don't say no.
Yeah.
Don't put butts in the way. Take an idea and figure it out. Another mentor of mine used to say, rephrase the question. And I use this with my own kids. I've got 2 children, 26 and 21, and I've been married now for 3 years, recently remarried, and I now have a 35 and a 30-year-old as well. But my own children, I would say, if you have an idea, instead of putting up barriers, I want you to reframe it to say, when I deliver X, how could we do it?
Yeah.
My dad actually did this with my then 5-year-old son, Harrison, who was sitting with my father, and they were buddies. And Harrison said, Papa, why aren't airplanes solar powered? Because they could fly every place.
Yeah.
And my dad grabbed a piece of paper and said, Harrison, come on over here. Let's talk about what that would look like.
Yeah.
Instead of saying no, he said, what if?
Yeah. Instead of saying
that's what retailers have to do.
Yeah. Well, and funny enough, I've actually thought the exact same thing. And I'm going, obviously, I know there's a lot of different power and, ratio wise and everything else, torque and all that. But at the same point, it's possible. I saw something the other day. My dad actually for a long time was researching how to create a magnetic engine that would run itself, right? Perpetual motion that never needed a battery, never needed a power source, but it would constantly power itself. And no one could come up with how to do it. There had been many people who have tried. There's been a couple of people who tried, and let's just say somehow the government got involved and those people are no longer around in a public setting. So we're just going to leave that alone. But what we will say is I actually saw an Instagram video the other day of a person who has patented the perpetual motion magnetic engine, never needs power, never needs anything. He has now patented it. It's real. And he's finding a way to make the amount of torque possible, potentially to drive vehicles, potentially to, power a plane, to do whatever. There are so many applications so just because it hasn't been done before, don't say that it's not possible. We just haven't figured out the right way to make it happen.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a big Albert Einstein fan as well.
Yeah.
And Einstein once said that imagination is a preview of coming attractions.
Yes.
And I really think if we use our imaginations, nothing is impossible. It may take more time. It may not even be in our lifetimes, but we need to start somewhere. Start with the idea. Start with the possibility rather than the impossibility.
Absolutely. So really quick, I'm going to take a pause and go back. Talk about comedy. Do you have a favorite joke? Is there a favorite joke that you have? I can give you a second to think, but I'll also tell you probably my favorite joke of all time has a little more sentimental value to me. So it's not the funniest joke, but it is funny. But my grandfather, his name was Eli, and he actually had a sister named Ruth. And one of his absolute favorite jokes of all time was it was actually like a little poem. He said, I took a ride on my new motorbike, my sister Ruth in back of me. I struck a bump at 65 and rode on ruthlessly. There you go. Bumps. Thank you. All right.
It's funny, Brian, because sometimes when people hear, improv comedy, they think immediately stand-up comedy, and they think that I could tell jokes as if the day is long. My wit, my improv abilities have nothing to do with stand-up. The one time I tried that at a Jack Daniel's invitational improv contest, I failed miserably. I cannot write comedy. Are good. Oh, I didn't get booed off the stage, but I realized real quickly that I'm much better at responding to situations and being reactive than I am sitting with a piece of paper thinking that I'm laughing to myself. Will bring humor to someone else. I think the funniest story I can think of, and this is, I don't think it's a great joke, but it was one my dad used to like and laugh about. And you gathered already, my mom played golf, my dad played golf, I played golf, I still do, still play badly. I learned that from my parents. But my dad used to tell the joke of a gentleman who an older gentleman. He always called him Bob because that was my dad's name.
Okay.
And Bob would join this group and he'd say, hey, I don't play golf very, very well, and I especially need some help getting out of sand traps. And on the very first hole, Bob hits it in the sand trap. And everybody's expecting him to be in there for 5, 6, 7 shots. We've all done it.
Yeah.
Bob has a perfect shot, lands right next to the hole. And everybody says, I thought you needed some help getting out of the trap. He said, I do. Can you give me a hand?
Yeah.
So it's not a great joke, but as a golfer, I think we can relate to it.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny because it's a perspective joke. You know,
it is a perspective
everybody
joke.
expects it to be about the shot, but it's about his literal existence.
Exactly right. Which is to me what sometimes, again, going back to retail, and I know we probably shouldn't, but we all get trapped into these expectations that, okay, it fits in 4 walls. I've got to carry product on a shelf. I've got to put a cash register out front. I've got to have somebody to move my carts around. Break that all down for a minute and say, what does retail really represent?
Yeah.
It has to be a relationship between somebody who wants to purchase a product or service and somebody who has it available. I don't care if it's 4 walls.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's on the shelf. I don't care if it goes in the shopping cart. But do you satisfy the relationship and the expectation of that shopper? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Now I'll figure it out.
At the end of the day, yeah, you're exactly right. If it might not be the prettiest process every single time, but if the customer walks away happy at the end of the day, you've done your job well. And so I think that's a great opportunity there. What are there any brands that you see really doing well with kind of adapting right now? You know, we mentioned the pandemic a while ago. Obviously, it's so funny because we keep getting on podcasts and it seems like everybody's ready to move on and not mention the pandemic, but also at the same time, we've all learned so many lessons through that time, you know, about adaptability, and the successful people can reference it knowing that it's not about going, oh, woe is the pandemic. It's about, wow, that really helped me tighten up what I was doing. That really helped me expand my own mind. That really helped me grow and learn. So are there any brands that you're like really following or kind of just seeing kind of grow beyond those 4 walls that you're talking about and really take that customer experience to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and there's many examples, and I don't know if there's, you know, one that I would say has every bit of their act together. I'm impressed with a couple of retailers today, retail operations. I think Walmart is back on its game. It kind of faltered there for a little while, but you look at the technology investments, the storefront technology or investments, the .com investments, and being in the HRG has a strong footprint in retail healthcare, being in health services. Walmart's done a really admirable job. From a private label standpoint, I love what Target has done. I think their own brand, their store brand has proven to be a pretty good path forward. I'm intrigued by what Dollar Tree is doing and Dollar General right now. Yes, you know, they might falter a little bit from a financial standpoint in a quarter. And if you judge their whole entirety by 1 quarter, you're missing the bigger picture. And they're delivering some unique experiences. Dollar Tree this week announced they're going to be into some different price points for food. I think those are some exciting movements. In the beauty space, Ulta has been at the top of its game. They've done some things omnichannel beyond their storefronts. Moving into Target a few years ago was a good move for them. So I like where Ulta is going. Beauty as a category is big right now. Pets as a category is big. Yeah. So whether it's Nestle, Purina, or other brands, doing a great job.
Yeah. Do you see, you know, you mentioned pet, you touched on that a minute ago. Do you think that was, you know, from what I can tell, that was extremely perpetuated and amplified by the pandemic because people were home with their pets more, right? Yep. Like you got more FaceTime with them than you've probably ever had in your life because you were stuck and they were your coworkers. They were your office mates for, you know, 3 years essentially. And so, even as people are coming back to work, we see more companies being more willing to accept maybe a pet coming to the office occasionally, not all the time, but as long as it's a well-behaved pet, you can bring them around now.
We did it at our office, and there's barely a day goes by where there isn't a dog or occasional cat in the office. We haven't allowed lizards and snakes yet. I don't know why.
Why not? Let's get a parakeet or something in there too. Wait, no, that'd be probably messy. Never mind.
But that perpetuation of the category, to your point, similar to beauty and pet, in my opinion, have been two explosive categories. Beauty, because we all took our masks off and realized we had beards, which I didn't before the pandemic. You maybe didn't either, although I think maybe you were born with one. On the other hand, everybody was caring for themselves above the mask. So eye makeup and eyeliner and eye whitening were very big during pandemic. Now all of a sudden, and dry lips were big, but now it's lipstick and mascara and other, or rouge and foundation and things that I don't know anything about.
That's okay.
Are really popular. Pets, same thing. People leaned into the pet category. We saw them pop up in Lowe's hardware stores, home improvement stores. All of a sudden there's Petco inside. We saw Chewy take off. We saw some product, Bausch & Lomb launched a eye care product for pets under a different name. I believe it's Dr. Watson's. And, all of a sudden, pet became explosive. I don't see it going any place but continued trajectory forward, and innovation is going to drive that. Fresh food, freeze-dried food, cooler sections in the main aisles, pet care services. HEB did something incredible. They don't even offer pet babysitting, and they devoted a whole wall of their store to local services that could be available for HEB shoppers, including pet care, pet walking, and pet washing.
Yeah. Well, and Walmart just recently announced their partnership, right, with PAWP. And so
exactly.
Walmart Plus, you get a 1 year, I think it is, membership with PAWP.
Exactly.
You get health care for your pet, kind of on call is what I'm understanding, and so it's
exactly
like you
right.
call them up and say, hey, Fido's got this issue. How can I treat it, or what do you recommend? And so I think, you mentioned Walmart's really back on their game, and I agree. I think that they kind of sidestepped for a while, and they almost lost their way as I think I would say it was in the earlier years of Doug really finding his footing and taking the helm. I think that he took on a lot of challenges that he probably wasn't expecting, maybe. And I don't know, maybe I'm completely shooting in the dark on that one, but I saw him come in, and I've met him on a handful of occasions. He's always the kindest, gentlest guy, but also you can tell he's got that determination. He is a true legend in retail when it comes to recognizing a customer's need and trying to help redirect and bring everyone under the same direction, the same umbrella. He's got a really great vision. So if anyone here is not familiar with Doug McMillon, go out, research him, look up some videos of what he's doing. It's funny because you might see him on a YouTube video and go, he is totally fake. He's PRing it right now. No, I can tell you, I personally have, interacted with him on many occasions. He's real. He's legit. And I think as more companies get authentic in that view, we're seeing more CEOs, CMOs, CFOs getting on TikTok, getting on Instagram, having their own personal channel where they're showing who they really are aside from just the brand. And it's playing to their advantage right now. It's doing really well.
I think it's become very apparent that he's very customer centric. In other words, I'm going to identify the needs that customers have, and we're going to figure out a way to deliver to that. If we can't do it ourselves, we're going to look outside and partner with somebody. PAWP is a good example.
Absolutely.
To bring a service forward. I talk with my own children and young folks quite often about what are the leadership traits, and Doug certainly has them. And there's three things that kind of shaped my leadership that I think Doug probably embodies extremely well, and I think all of us could benefit from. Yeah. One is get involved in an organized group activity. In my case, early on, it was orchestra and band, although I was in sports teams as well. But orchestra and band to me were ideal learning grounds because you're playing something individually as an instrument, but you're part of a group and an organization that's delivering something collectively. So I say get involved in some group activity where you can be an individual but part of a team. The second thing that helped me significantly, and I would love to sit down with Doug and ask him if he's ever had this personal experience, but I waited tables through college. And having the opportunity to serve somebody requires three things. Keen listening skills. You better get it right. I was at a country club where the expectation of our general manager was you didn't write anything down and you listened intently.
Yeah.
2, it taught you how to relate with people. Well, you're serving guests in a restaurant. You put on your happy face. It's more than play acting. You are the restaurant to them. Yeah. And then the third was attention to detail. You needed to make sure that when you're delivering that food, that you're serving from the right side and clearing from the right side and minding what's going on in that table. So that was the second skill set that I believe leaders could benefit from. And then the third was improv. Again, I don't know if Doug ever did improv stage work, but he did some play acting and he did some portrayal, setting himself out there. I think improv gives people the opportunity to be comfortable in their own skin and learn not to reject ideas, but rather accept and invite others into a conversation. And again, Doug McMillan, I know myself in that camp. Brian, you seem to be in that camp of willingness to be curious. Yeah. And then reacting in a way that delivers.
Absolutely. I think that is, I'm a firm believer, and I'm probably almost to a fault that food service and some form of retail service should be kind of mandatory for up and coming students.
Absolutely.
Graduating high school or college. There's people who will absolutely contradict me and say that I'm wrong, and that's okay. But I am a firm believer that they teach those positions and they teach it differently. So I think that realistically, if it were up to me, if I were leading something like a class or curriculum requirements, I would say you need at least one semester work in food service. You need at least one semester work in a retail sales environment, like a sales floor. Like I worked in many restaurants, fast food and sit down services, in high school and college both. I worked in the Buckle and a few other retail establishments as I was in college. And it taught me so many lessons, not only about how to serve customers, but also about what I really wanted to do, who I was and who I wasn't, what I was willing to put up with in some situations. I actually had a manager, I won't say where I was at, but I had a manager that actually accused me of theft. And she just knew it was me. She knew it was me. There was no other person that it could have possibly been. I was the only one on the floor at that moment when that had to have happened. And what's so funny is I stood my ground. I didn't cave, and I knew it wasn't me. But and I said, okay, she's like, well, we're going to call the cops. They're going to show up, and you're going to stay here, and no one's leaving this building. And there was me and like 3 or 4 other associates on the floor at that time. And they said, we're going to do this, and we're going to find out, and we're going to hold you accountable. I said, go for it. Have fun. I didn't get disrespectful. I just said, go for it. They go back. The police show up. They review the tapes with the management. Come to find out, it was this other young kid who had that was his first day working there. But he had gotten a job because he had actually, there was a whole fun story on it. And the summation is that apparently this kid was a high schooler, like senior. He had taken, at that point, obviously, marijuana was of a completely different acceptability. But apparently he had taken a deal with somebody who was a distributor, and he decided he was going to sell that at his school. Well, his parents found out, made him flush the product. And so he was stealing from the store to try and offset to pay his dealer. That's not a fun one. Don't do that, kids.
No, that's a life lesson that, unfortunately for that individual, was very painful.
Yeah.
But it also taught you tremendous skill, which is, stand
Yes.
up for what's right,
Yeah.
be of high integrity,
Yeah.
and when put to the challenge, accept the challenge
Yeah.
and hold your ground. And I think that's tremendous.
Yeah.
I I honestly believe that getting in and out of stores and being curious about what's going on is a lesson that anybody involved in retail should never stop.
Yeah.
I'm in and out of stores all the time. All of our company, all the folks at HRG are required, not required by, mandate, but enjoy going into
Heavily.
stores.
Yeah.
And we see so much. It was Yogi Berra said, you can see a lot by looking around. And I think looking around in retail is really important.
Absolutely. You know, as we're kind of wrapping up here, there's one question I always love to ask. And that is, if you could go back in time to when you were just getting going, we've touched on a lot of different topics. We've touched on a lot of different areas. You're talking about curiosity, you're talking about being adaptable. If you could go back when you were just getting going on your retail journey, is there a lesson that you have learned? What would one piece of advice maybe be that you would go back and tell yourself, whether that's about advancing yourself faster or maybe advancing yourself slower and saying, hey, pay attention. Um, what else? What's the one piece of advice you would give yourself, do you think?
Hmm. I honestly, Brian, that I'm learning every day. I've made far more mistakes than I have corrections, which makes no sense whatsoever. But I make a mistake every day and I learn from it. And I guess the willingness to test and fail, the willingness to put yourself out there and try something new.
Yeah.
I being from Wisconsin, which is a pretty conservative, pretty pragmatic state, when we color in a coloring book, we color between the lines, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I never did. I like to color in the margins and let the picture pop out the middle. So we need to do that in retail. I didn't do that as early in my career. I didn't think I had permission to do that. I'd meet with clients and they'd say, what do you think I should do? And I would give them the answer I think they expected to hear.
Yeah.
What I wish I had done is said, let's try something new. I've reached the point now in my career, if somebody comes to me with a new brand and they say, do you think this will do well in retail? I'm not bashful about saying, your baby is ugly. We need to go back to the drawing board, because I don't want to see anybody fail that fast.
Yeah.
Let's get it right, but let's do it in a way that is courageous while at the same time inventive.
And I love that, because we've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast here and in different conversations of fail fast, fail frequently, fail forward. And it's just that curiosity, that willingness to take a gamble, but it needs to be, like you're saying, a calculated risk, right?
Correct. You
Say
don't want
that
to be reckless.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't about throwing caution to the wind and just doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
There have to be some rationale,
Yeah.
and it has to be rational.
Yeah.
So once that's done, I've got 6 or 7 book ideas, wrapped around in my head that someday I'm going to write, and maybe RetailWire will help me get there. But most of them have to do with creativity, imagination, and execution. And if we can do any of those 3 things or all of those 3 things, we're going to be better served.
It's really good. Dave, thank you so much for jumping in with me today. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I know that I'm going to enjoy getting to know you even better through the years here at RetailWire and in the future. And so really, really appreciate you, man.
Appreciate the opportunity, Brian. Have a great 4th of July.
Hey, you too. And if this was your first episode listening to the RetailWire podcast, thanks for joining us. We really, really appreciate you. Be sure and hit that subscribe button. If you really enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. Copy the link, send it out to them. Dave is a master at what he does. And so, him, the entire RetailWire BrainTrust, we're adding new people this year as well to the BrainTrust. So feel free to check out our other episodes. We'd love to have you do that. If you want to see what Dave and I look like, you can head to our YouTube channel at RetailWire. And so you can actually look us up there. Never mind me. I'm wearing an athletic shirt today, whatever. But so thanks again for jumping in. Dave, one last question for you. If people want to follow up with you after this, is that okay? Could they maybe do that through LinkedIn, or is there a certain area that maybe a website or something that they should visit you at?
Well, I think LinkedIn is a pretty good choice to connect with me personally, and all my contact information is there, and I welcome any conversation, Brian, with enthusiastic listeners. Yeah. If you want to know more about Hamacher Resource Group, Hamacher.com, HAMACHER.com is the place to go. We've got some really smart, talented folks on our 50-member team who are passionate about working across the retail supply chain.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure and I'll put a link to your LinkedIn and to Hamacher Group's website down here in the show notes of this. So if you want to check those out, feel free and do that. But like I said, mash that subscription button. We're on all your favorite podcast platforms out there. So there's never a reason to miss us. And we've got even more great content coming up, like this conversation I've just had with Dave. So thanks again. And we will catch you guys soon on the next episode here on the Retail Wire podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Retail Wire podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a comment for a chance to hear it read on the next show. See you next time here on the Retail Wire podcast.